I'm a solo Desire author. I have about 10 titles out with Desire. And my latest book, The Billionaire in Penthouse B, was actually a wrap-up of a 6-author continuity series that they were doing, set in Manhattan on the Upper East Side, an apartment building on Park Avenue. And the thread that tied all the books together was that this woman had apparently jumped from the roof of this swanky apartment building, and no one knew why. My heroine, the heroine of the last book, her name is Jacinda, and she's British. And advertising. I spent a year studying in Britain, so that was a nice trip down memory lane for me too. So anyway, she's the sister of the woman who jumped, the older sister, and she's beside herself, obviously, and she thinks she knows who did it, and it's the billionaire in Penthouse B. And so she decides that she's going to go undercover because the police have ruled the death a suicide, but she knew her sister very well. She didn't think that there was any way her sister could have committed suicide. She decides to get herself a job as this guy's housekeeper. And suffice it to say, she doesn't do much cleaning. But what do you think was happening? Anyway, the scene that I'm going to read from is a scene where she's already moved into his penthouse. She's a live-in housekeeper now. They've thrown a big party, and she slept with him. And we find out what happens next.
What?
Gage woke up feeling sated. No, even better, Gage corrected himself as he opened his eyes. He felt content, and it was all due to Jane. He glanced over at the other side of the bed, which was empty. Jane had already gotten up, which was quite a feat since he was an early riser himself. Raising his head, he noted the clock on the bedside table revealed it was 6:30. And since he could smell coffee brewing, Jane must already be getting breakfast ready. Gage settled back against his pillow and stretched. One thing was certain in the clear light of day. He should have given in to the attraction between him and Jane a lot sooner. He'd never cared what other people would think of him sleeping with his housekeeper. He was rich enough not to give a damn, and long past the point of needing social approval. And Jane was genuine, the real deal, unlike so many women he knew, unlike his ex-wife, for example. Now, he didn't know why he'd fought against the attraction to Jane for so long. Turning his thoughts in an even more pleasant direction, he contemplated whisking Jane off to his hideaway in Bermuda. They could both get a respite from Manhattan, which overflowed with tourists during the holiday season, and escape to a balmy climate. He wondered what Jane would say to the plan, and then grinned. At least he wouldn't have to worry about her work schedule. He'd be more than happy to give her a few days off. With that thought, he rose and threw on some sweatpants. When he padded downstairs, he discovered Jane in the kitchen, her back to him, and talking in a low voice into her cell phone. It was apparent she hadn't heard him come down. His gaze swept over her, and he felt the kick of arousal. She must have found some clothes in her room because she was dressed in a knee-length satin robe. The robe, however, did little to hide her assets. Instead, it showcased an hourglass figure and outlined a rounded bottom. Her hair tumbled over her shoulders, and slim, shapely legs seemed to go on forever. Desire slammed into him. He wanted to take her again right here. Then a couple of her words reached him, and abruptly he frowned. He was standing a few feet away, and he realized he didn't recognize the voice she was using. Her accent was British. He stepped closer. Do the police know anything about Marie's death? Gage stilled. It's so frustrating. I know our sister didn't take her own life. Gage's eyes narrowed. What the hell did Jane mean by sister? She was obviously talking about Marie Endicott, the broker whom he'd hired and whose death the police had ruled suspicious. But if Jane was Marie's sister, why hadn't she said anything? His mind zipped through the possibilities, and he didn't like any of them. And as his suspicion grew, so did his simmering anger. It was looking like he'd been taken for a ride by a woman, again. He must have made a sound, because suddenly Jane whirled around, her eyes wide. Shock flitted across her features, but was quickly replaced by alarm. Gage would have thought the reaction was comical if he hadn't been at the receiving end of it. "Andrea, I must go," she said. She spoke into the receiver, but her eyes were fixed on him. As soon as Jane ended her call, he didn't wait for an invitation. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. Her lips parted. He could practically see the wheels turning in her head, as if she was trying to guess how much he'd heard and come up with something to say. The realization only made him more furious. "Wait, I know," he said sarcastically, answering his own question. "You're Marie Endicott's sister." He watched as Jane went pale. Except, he realized, he wasn't even sure anymore that her name was Jane. She seemed to come to some kind of resolution, and her chin lifted. "My name is Jacinda Endicott." "Nice British accent," he commented. "Now mind telling me what the hell you're doing playing maid?" She squared her shoulders. "I can explain if only you'll let me." Under other circumstances, he might have admired her bravado, but this situation hit too close to home. He'd let her get under his skin, damn it. He folded his arms. This ought to be good. She took a deep breath. "I came here because I knew from the beginning my sister couldn't have killed herself, but I was desperate because the police had ruled it a suicide." She spoke quickly, as if she believed that at any moment he'd give her the boot from the apartment. In that he acknowledged she wasn't too far off. "What does this have to do with me?" he demanded. "I decided to take matters into my own hands by posing as a maid in the building so you could do some snooping," he finished for her. She hesitated, then nodded. Yes. She looked vulnerable. Even now, he couldn't help his instinctual reaction to her effortless sexuality. "Why me?" he demanded. "Out of all the residents in this building." "I discovered you and Marie had known each other," she admitted in her low voice. He nodded. "Right. She was my real estate agent. I was impressed by her energy and hired her despite the fact that she was young and relatively inexperienced." He watched as Jacinda bit her lip. "I thought you and Marie were involved." Realization dawned, and with it his anger kicked up a notch. "Are you telling me you suspected I had something to do with your sister's death?" When she nodded, he stared at her disbelievingly. He trusted her, damn it. "You slept with me, and all the while you thought I had something to do with your sister's death?" he asked incredulously. "I'd ruled you out by that point." "Oh, yeah? How? By finding the killer? Aside from being a client, I couldn't find any evidence linking you to Marie." "Great, just great. I've been legit with you from the beginning, and all the while you've been playing detective." She hugged herself. "The longer I looked without turning up anything, the less likely it was you were the one responsible." His lips curled. Apparently she couldn't bring herself to say the word murderer. "I've searched Marie's apartment," she went on, "and so did the police. To no avail. I've also been to my sister's old office, where her coworker took over the lease and is still running the real estate business. Nothing." He'd heard murmurings through the building grapevine that Marie's old apartment on the 6th floor hadn't been sold yet. Now he knew why. Jacinda was still hoping for clues.